Welcome back after the short break. Now I have with me Thomas Lippert. Thomas Lippert is the new product manager of Chekcmk. So he's a bit new to Chekcmk, but the speed in which he has acquired all the knowledge is really astonishing. We had many workshops.
From where you are.
I think he's already a Chekcmk expert in these couple of months. But anyway, Thomas will speak about the future, not about the present of Chekcmk. So and he will influence the future. So he's the guy who tries to think very hard which things are important for Chekcmk, where should we evolve into. Makes many workshops where also I take part, and we have lively discussions. As you know me, when I discuss, it's always hard to maintain, hard to sustain.
No.
But at the end, we always get good solutions.
We fight for the best customer solution. That's
yes, and really, I think it's really hard work sometimes, but the outcome is always something that I like very much. And so I'm looking very much into the future, working with you together and making Chekcmk even better. And today it's about monitoring not only in the cloud, but from the cloud. So the idea is also to have Chekcmk running in the cloud, as I got to write. So this brings a couple of new interesting problems and solutions. So let's see what's going on.
Okay, thank you, Matthias. Yes, Matthias mentioned I'm recently new, so started mid-March as the new product manager here, and I am already in touch with some of you. And I'm currently like the main guy behind the roadmap channel. So if you have any feature requests or want to discuss things, drop things in here, and I will answer them after this session, of course. So let's get started. It is about monitoring the cloud from the cloud. So Chekcmk already offers a great hybrid cloud monitoring experience. So as most of you have started on-premise with a Chekcmk on-premise monitoring via on-premise environment. You can also run Chekcmk in the cloud. I've talked to a few customers the last 2 days who run it either on AWS or Azure, AWS or Azure, and monitor their environment here. And of course, with our distributed monitoring, you can consolidate all that information into one Chekcmk server to run it properly and get a view across all your company. But we want to improve here and drive it to the next level. So first of all, we want to give you a more cloud-native experience. So to make it simpler to deploy Chekcmk to the cloud. You also want to simplify the configuration, the steps necessary to monitor from the cloud, for example, on-premise. We also want to handle in a better way dynamic workloads. We do that already for vSphere, but especially in the cloud where you have the elastic cloud, the dynamic workloads as we pop out the scaling, we need to improve here as well. And finally, monitoring the cloud means also monitoring the many, many services in a multi-cloud environment, which all of the different cloud vendors are offering. So let me dive into that one. So starting with the first point, making it simpler to deploy Chekcmk in the cloud. So how are we doing it? We want to provide you an image in the Amazon or Azure marketplace from which you can create your local instance, and that instance then will be your Chekcmk. It should be up and running within minutes. I really talk about minutes or 3-4 minutes, depending on how quick the cloud is at that point. This image is pre-configured to be ready for secure cloud usage. Let me explain what it means. So either we deliver a self-signed certificate out of the box, or, and that depends on how you set up your cloud instance, we create a Let's Encrypt certificate for you. The difference why we do both depends on whether you have assigned a domain to your cloud instance or not, because Let's Encrypt doesn't allow you to use like a non-domain and create a certificate. So you can't do it just for the AWS IP space, as an example.
So you mean the HTTP certificate for accessing the Chekcmk server later on, so that you get an HTTPS connection?
Exactly.
Right.
And that's my next point. It will be always and only HTTPS.
Yeah, of course.
Because in the cloud, you shouldn't do anything else.
Yeah, and that's something we need to support the customer, because it's something you need to do in the actual machine and not within Chekcmk. So that's something.
Yeah, that's why we add to, like, this is not just installing it and then making the image available. It's about adding all this additional security, making it ready for the cloud. That's our intention here.
I think especially if the Chekcmk server is reachable via the internet, there's no alternative to having the best security that's possible.
Exactly. That's talking about security also. There will be no initial passcode, no default passcode. So basically, you can't run Chekcmk, you can't run any site without defining your passcode. So there is no way for us to basically provide an image which runs and while others might know the same passcode. And we provide some additional tooling around it for operation, like, for example, backup, or if you need to scale up or down your instance, we give you the tools and the descriptions so you get the right Chekcmk package, which basically helps you doing your monitoring needs. What we provide are two flavors. So first flavor is the free edition, so everybody can very quickly test and try Chekcmk in the cloud instance. That's one option. The other one is the enterprise option. And so if you go for the later, you get either bring your own license, or you use on AWS, you use the platform licensing. What you can do with that image. So once you have configured it, you can monitor, of course, your cloud instance. You can also monitor your on-premise instances, or basically sites, also whatever you like. And you can make that Chekcmk part of distributed monitoring, for example, as a satellite. So leveraging all the cool features you already know and basically love in Chekcmk.
Yeah, so you would have two use cases. The first is to simply run Chekcmk in the cloud because you don't want to have on-premise. The other one is that you have an on-premise solution, but for certain reasons you need one instance in the cloud for monitoring cloud stuff and can integrate that in your existing Chekcmk landscape.
Whatever you like.
Okay.
I mean, if you talk to companies, they start, some parts of the company are cloud only, some have a huge, for good reasons, huge on-premise installation. Some are in the way to migrate more and more workloads to the cloud. We must support them regardless of which is the current setup.
We support them on the whole journey from on-premise to the cloud and back again.
If they go back, we also do that.
Sometimes it happens that something goes back from the cloud.
Especially if you have lots of static load, when cloud might become too expensive. When
you are a provider yourself and get bigger and bigger and bigger, at some point you have reached the point where it's cheaper to run your own data center.
Absolutely.
So,
okay, I mentioned, so we create those images for you. One of the challenges is, if you go to the cloud, is how do you monitor your on-premise infrastructure? You can't simply reach out from the cloud, from the internet to any, your data center. So therefore, we need to change the way our agents are running. So we go from a pull agent, where the server triggers the agent, then gets the data, to a push agent. So the push agent takes all the monitoring data and delivers it on regular intervals to the monitoring server. That makes sure that you don't need to drill any holes, for example, in your network setup.
Yeah.
Talking about security as before.
I mean, that's basically one thing that we already have done. As I told yesterday, there are installations where some cron job on the Linux server fetches the agent data and sends it via email somewhere. So it works, but we want to make Verdict out of the box and make it secure, easy, and
that's exactly the point. It will be a setting in the bakery. So we take the existing agent. It will be a setting in the bakery when you create your agents. And when you have all the features from the bakery, maybe even with auto update, that's a decision you need to make, whether you like it or not, and I can understand both ways to go. And that will be then your push agent. Of course, it will come with all the encryption. I mean, you can't run anything in the cloud without encryption. So all data going from your sites, from your servers to the cloud will be encrypted out of the box. Optionally, it will be compressed. In the cloud, you pay for data. So data consumption creates cost. So of course, you can't go without it, but we want to reduce that cost. So it will be all compressed. It's optional, so if you don't like it, or for whatever reason you want to look inside, you can disable it. But the default will be compression.
Yeah, makes sense, because the agent data is text-based and it's very well compressible.
I strongly believe we get it down to 20%.
Yeah, and anyway, Chekcmk is very terse with its information, so I think we end up with a very little footprint of data traffic induced by the monitoring. So.
And we add to that one, so we think if you're doing a cloud monitoring, you don't need to get the data in the 1 minute interval we have today.
I mean, it's up to you. It's up to the customer.
So our default
we even have customers. I have a customer over in USA. They changed to 10 seconds.
Oh,
because they were dealing with the trade exchange and made online trades, and they had stock market courses that were outdated for 5 minutes, and that cost them $1 million once.
I fully understand
They
that use
changed
case.
to 10-second interval.
Yeah, so my point is, of course, if you have such critical systems, you shouldn't go with a cloud solution anyway.
But it's always possible. I mean, if you just have a few of these critical systems, you can set them to 10 seconds and the other one to 5 minutes or whatever. So you have the
idea is
flexibility.
basically we go with a standard longer rate for the cloud instances to also reduce cost and take care of the longer latency. We might have customers who have like their cloud data center running in the US and monitoring over here, so you need to take care of that.
But anyway, it's just a default setting. So
it's a default setting, exactly.
Just in order to be safe, not to waste too much money, and afterwards you can crank it up where you need it.
You can fine-tune it as needed.
Makes sense, yeah.
So let's drill a little bit into the details. I guess a lot of you are a little bit interested how this will work. So we have a few challenges to tackle. So the first one is handshake, how to create trust between the agent and the server. So how are we doing it? So first of all, in the baker, we add a certificate to the agent. And that certificate will be used for the initial communication. So basically, the agent calls home, and the server recognizes, okay, that's an agent signed by me, so from me. So I accept that in. So it's trust on first use.
And how can the agent be sure that the Checkmk server is trustworthy? Is it because of the certificate?
Yeah, it's both the URL and the certificate are both the same. So that's basically...
So the agent speaks with this HTTP certificate, so he's sure it's the real server.
It's a real server.
And then the agent authenticates himself by this kind of...
Exactly. What happens next is, once we have this trust on first use, the server issues what we call an enrollment token, some secret.
Yeah.
And that will be pushed back in the initial transfer. And from that time on, basically the server will recognize when any agent coming with that enrollment token, that this is the one related to a particular host and accepts the data. Why are we doing it? Why not remaining with the certificate? We think that it's risky for us because it would allow denial of service attack. So certificate verification, all that stuff is quite expensive. And there's a very likely case when you just send pushing messages and the server has to depackage everything, it will overload.
Also, it's very hard to revoke a certificate and stuff like that, so this makes absolutely sense.
So with the enrollment token, we can basically cache the information of all the agents and very quickly disregard all traffic coming from like an unknown, from an agent with an unknown token. So that's why we have decided for this approach. A little bit more detail. So we use a protocol called GRPC. That's from Google. It's an RPC-like, a remote procedure call-like protocol made for the internet. So you can look it up. I think it's grpc.io. So it uses HTTP2, of course, encrypted and compressed, if you like, and a few other things. So we think that's the right protocol for an internet world. It's basically proven. Google's running that for, I don't know, 10 years now internally, and about 2016 made it public. You have a lot of libraries available, so it's something we think is very reliable to use. So that's the base behind it. Okay, so that was the push agent. Let's move further. So there are a few devices which you can't install an agent. As an example, all those network devices, printers, so everything what you monitor with SNMP.
SNMP, yeah, it's a pretty broken protocol anyway.
It is, yeah. It should be called ISNMP for insecure network.
Yeah, it's simple. It's like Einstein said, you should make everything as simple as possible, but not simpler. I don't think this is a bit too simple.
Got a little bit over the edge, yeah. But, you know, nobody has any good replacement. So the point is, it's not suitable for the internet, so how can we do it? And we can't install any agent on it. So the only choice we have is we need to make something which can be installed locally in the network. And that's what we call a local SNMP proxy. Think of it as a Chekcmk Lite, a much smaller one, no front end and whatever. And that does all the monitoring as you know it today. So it will reach out to the different hosts and get the data. It will be the target for any SNMP traps which might be sent.
Yeah,
and it will
which
take
are rarely used anyway. Traps are rarely used anyway.
We just had this one.
We support them, so will continue to support them.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
So basically, it will collect all the data and send it in regular interval up to the cloud or to the remote. Basically, it doesn't have to be a cloud as a Chekcmk server. It can be any.
Yeah, I think we need to
Chekcmk.
emphasize this. All these new mechanisms could also be used in a self-built infrastructure where you have, for certain security reasons, one server behind some firewall or something.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have a high secure environment like power plant, for example, you might be very restrictive of who can communicate where. So unless you're a really air-gapped network where there's no way to reach out, then you can basically set up to push the information outside and monitor on the outside.
That's the reason why we sometimes have this. Or for example, in distributed environments where you monitor stuff of a customer. The customer wouldn't let you have access to his servers, but with that solution, it would be easier to monitor remote sites from customers.
It collects data and sends it out. Of course, it needs to receive somehow the configuration. It needs to know which
of course,
host,
but once it's up and running, you don't need active access to your customer site, and that could be an interesting way to monitor remote things.
So that's the other thing we do, so the SNMP proxy. Another topic I mentioned before is dynamic workload. So we have the DCD to handle vSphere environments where additional VMwares are started or removed. Or so that's already where we know how to handle them. But we think for cloud it needs to be a little bit different. We had a close look into whether DCD is the right answer, but we think we will do something in addition to that. So when a new workload, for example, for an autoscaling EC2 instance, basically starts up, it calls home, it calls the Chekcmk server. So we recognize a new host is coming in, we identify it, it's a loud host, and then based on the configuration, on some labels and some enrollment rules, that will be a new thing, we assign that host to a folder. So basically we evaluate that one, and then it will be placed in a folder. We do a service discovery afterwards, and then all rules which apply to the folder will apply to that host as well.
So it's kind of a self-registration of the host.
It's the self-registration. The point is, in a cloud environment, you can't have somebody waiting till like a host pops up and then do something. That's simply impossible.
Yeah, you always get additional latency. But what about the host deregistration?
Yeah, so that's the interesting challenge. So we will also build a process which kind of phases out hosts which haven't called home for a time.
Yeah.
So it's not every host. So it's not for every host we monitor a default behavior, but like it might be ruled for folders.
Yes.
So those folders who get automatically basically hosts assigned. Like if a host doesn't call home for 10 minutes, half an hour, 2 days, it might actually be removed.
It's also good for getting a monitoring green, because if if a host is down, simply remove it from the monitoring and all your problems are gone.
Yeah.
Automatically.
It might be.
Okay, that's not the primary use case, but we get the point.
Yeah. There's still a few challenges to be solved, so we are currently discussing naming, because with autoscaled hosts have kind of a strange naming, so we must have a reasonable naming. It makes sense for the user, as you can imagine. Also, basically, the labels can only be computed after received the first monitoring data. So we think we need to have like a setup stage or inbox stage where the hosts pop in, when we get the first load, do all of that, and then basically the rules kick in. And the other thing is we are looking into other use cases, so that's also something, because we think it might be also a very good use case for many other operations. So sometimes maybe you just start new servers with image them with your default stuff, and then don't really want them to basically then go to Chekcmk and register them. If they are all the same, why not? If you have like a cloud, like a very elastic homegrown infrastructure, it might be a very good idea to basically use that one as well. And finally, last but not least, if we talk about the cloud, it's about monitoring all the cloud services in Chekcmk. So what you see here on this slide is AWS. On the left, you see all the current checks we currently do. And on the right is what we propose for 2.1. So we listed here, of course, the native agent, because with that native agent, you can also do a lot of things, especially if you do a lift and shift. You might have your application running MySQL somewhere, and if you move it to the cloud, the agent might still run and do the monitoring. But then basically Aurora DB, Document DB, the message queue, and serverless. That's what we plan to do, at least. But we want your opinion on that one, and I think that's the... Can you start?
Yeah, we have prepared a couple of polls here. So let's go for the polls.
Okay.
We have a first poll that's about AWS. So we have created. Let me have a look. We have created quite a long list.
I think 15 or 19
of additional AWS services that we could possibly monitor. And now you should see the vote. It should pop up in your framework. So once again, if you popped in via YouTube, please change to conference.checkmk.com. You will see the same stream, but additional controls. Then you can take part at the polls and the Q&A and the chat. So it's free anyway. So if you popped in via YouTube, check over. You also have the link in the video description. So
you see already things coming in. Oh, I see one leading highly. Or
yeah, we have 29 votes, which is still not enough, I think, to have a precise result.
Yeah, don't forget, those who are on Azure might not vote for AWS services.
Yeah, yes, of course. When we made the polls in the
slide.
user interface, we got much faster results because user interface is something everybody uses, of course, in AWS. But we have about 60 votes now, and let's have a look at the results.
Okay.
So
what is the leading?
Winning is AWS ECS.
ECS.
But we already have a strong impact on AWS Health, whatever that means.
So ECS is the container service, if I don't misunderstand the difference.
I think it's a kind of virtual machines, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like Docker.
Yeah, okay.
So, and the health is like a general AWS help. So if Amazon has problems in their network anywhere, so that's also important to monitor that one, not just basically your own site. So they might announce that they have network problems on the site, so it doesn't help you if you know your services are running.
Yeah, and then we have AWS Route 53 is strong with 29%.
That's a DNS service, interesting.
We have AWS Lambda with 32%.
Okay, that's on our list.
And the next one is Redis, Elastic Cache for Redis, 23%.
So thank you for your voting. We will take all of that into account. So what I listed here is our proposal, but of course we take the input you provide here and will adopt a roadmap accordingly. So now we run the same poll again on Azure. So same questions here. We have already a bunch of currently supported services, but we're also looking what else to support on Azure.
Yeah, the poll's already running, so I'm curious about the number of people who take part in the poll. With AWS, it was something about 65. So it's also interesting to compare the impact of AWS versus Azure, or Azure.
Globally, AWS is the market leader, but maybe in companies here in basically participating or doing monitoring, maybe Azure is stronger. So
I have the feeling that Azure is somehow catching up a bit.
I think so as well.
So and it also shows the number of votes. We already have 60 votes now for Azure things.
Interesting.
So even 70 now. So I think.
Yeah, now customer base apparently.
Yeah, it looks
Azure
like we have a transition.
Than AWS.
Let's have a look at the results. So, what do you think? What's number one?
I always thought basically we were currently missing the load balancer. That might be a hot one, my opinion.
Yeah, it's a hot one. It's number two actually. So number one is the Azure Service Health.
Oh, okay, same as.
But isn't that something we already have?
No, we currently basically take a lot of care about the service you run in your cloud instance, but not like the meter layer.
Ah, okay.
I think that's something we are really missing, so we need to improve.
Monitor Microsoft himself. So
yeah, Microsoft or Amazon makes announcement if like a data center breaks down or so.
Ah, okay.
And so before you start, going crazy about why is my database dead, maybe you see an announcement, it's dead.
They provide information about how good their data center is operating currently. Very good.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is number one, but number two, 57% is the load balancer, as you suggested. Part 3 is MySQL and Postgres, which is interesting. But these open source databases are still heavily in use, 53%. And then we have the traffic manager.
Okay, that's I need to look up.
45%.
I think that's maybe a load balancer.
Yeah, and then there's a long tail. There's a great distance to the next one with 15% the service bus.
But
so this is really, these four make the majority.
Thank you again. This gives us basically the guidance of what to tackle next. So we will take that into account and replan accordingly. Okay, then for 2 more votes.
Oh, we have 129 votes now for the Azure thing.
Okay.
Which is, the AWS, we just get 99 votes, so we have 130 here. Maybe we talked longer about the topic, but
it's clear.
At least it's not place 2, I think. So it's
okay. We should make them both equally, and that's what I currently have on my slide as well. So basically, for us, AWS and Azure are both priority 1, and then following by a priority 2 of Google Cloud. And with the next vote, is you want to get your opinion on how much you favor Google Cloud and how much we should invest here, or if we first should focus on AWS and Azure. I mean, it's a little bit unfair, I'm aware of, because if you're either AWS or Azure, you might not give Google any vote. But it's important for us to see how many of you are also using Google Cloud, and therefore to learn how much we should prioritize this one over the other 2.
Anyway, we are always eager to get a good coverage of every technology. We have 2,000 check plugins, so there are some check plugins rarely used, but I think there's always this discussion. There are some check plugins rarely anybody uses, right? Don't we drop them? But if you ask the question differently, how many users, which percentage of users uses one of these rare plugins? Then you get a very high number. So this is really, I think, a very strong advantage of Chekcmk that we have these plugins and that we always also address rarely used technology. But at the end, you want 100% coverage of your data center.
I'm absolutely with you, Matthias. It's not about basically if we do Google or not. It's about should we first do many more plugins or many more checks for AWS and Azure, and then Google, or should we quickly do all of them and keep them on an equal basically distance or deep pace going forward?
Yeah, and the result is we have 140 votes now, and roughly 1/4, 29% of the people say we should do something with Google Cloud.
Okay.
So I think
that makes sense.
At least some basic monitoring should be the level for us.
I think so as well. So it's not, we shouldn't redo our roadmap and do Google next before we do any AWS and Azure checks, but we should do it very quickly. Okay, and finally, and can you run the last poll here?
Slide. Last poll is going to run.
Is about any other cloud instances. So we know there are other cloud out there like OpenStack, Oracle Cloud, the VMware Cloud Foundation, and maybe others. And these
so you mean the more bizarre technology? But
I don't say bizarre.
Sometimes it's newcomers.
It's newcomers. They have some advantage over everything else, or they are in a special location, which makes more sense. Like if you have data sovereignty issues, you don't want to use an American vendor for whatever reason. So that's what they try to get here. So basically it will be, you're fine, you have 3 options, and if you have anything which is not on the list, unfortunately in this vote we can't allow you to add things in, but please post something on the roadmap channel and say there's one more thing we want. Here's basically, I need another cloud provider, this is the one. So we need to learn about it.
So let's have a look at the results. We have 120 votes right now.
Okay, that's good.
And 1/4, 25% is in favor of OpenStack.
Okay.
So roughly half of the votes say I'm fine with these 3 services, 50%. But this means that the other 50% are not fine and want Oracle Cloud 6%, OpenStack 25%, VMware Cloud Foundation 15%, and other 7%. So I think it really would be rewarding to add support for these as well.
Absolutely. So this question was not to deliver something in version 2.1. So we focus on AWS, Azure, and maybe next Google. But it's for us to learn about what else is demanded in the market, so we can already plan for it. And maybe if you make now a design decision which might be good for those three, but might be really a problem for any other one, we might now reconsider. So that's why I ask this question. Okay, with that, let me come to an end of this session. So first of all, I hope I was able to show you that we are the right solution for you to help you anywhere where you are, whether you are heavy on-premise, a hybrid customer with monitoring both on-premise as well as in AWS or Azure, already a cloud-heavy customer with your monitoring already in the cloud and just a few things on-premise which you can't move, like network or printers. We are here to help you. We provide you the tool across all the way to do the monitoring, and we hope you see them also. We do this all at a good value for your money. Now, I talked about all those features. Let's have a look at when we will deliver them, because I think that's for roadmap or for an outlook, that's the very interesting part. So what you see here is our current timeline. So you see basically 4 ways of deliveries that are the lines top down. So we have a 2.0 feature pack 1 release planned, and the release is planned roughly for Q3 this year. And in this one, we will just add a new AWS and Azure services to our current monitoring set based on your feedback. Then next is our 2.1 release. That's currently planned for Q4 2021, so last quarter this year. And it will include the AMI image, the AWS image. It will include the push agent for Linux and Windows, some more checks for AWS and Azure. And that's a little bit aspirational. I hope we can get it done till that time. It's not. It's the dynamic workload discovery. This is not about whether we do it or not. It's more like, can we hit this release, or do we need to move it out a little bit? Then following the 2.1 release, roughly Q1, Q2, in that time frame, we will have a feature pack release here as well. In this release, we plan to deliver the Azure image, more AWS and Azure checks, and our first Google Cloud checks. And then in Q3 next year, we will add additional platforms for the push agent, more checks for AWS and Azure, so that will be a constant meme for a longer time, more checks for the Google Cloud and the SNMP proxy. And with that, let's jump to any questions.
Yeah, we still have, we already have a couple of questions here in the Q&A. If you popped in via YouTube, change to conference.checkmk.com and you can ask your questions. So there's a question with 15 volts. Would it be possible to add the compression to the current pull agent as well?
I think so. We are currently looking to make it consistent across everything, so both encryption and compression.
Anyway, I think you could do it very simple yourself. You just need to pipe the output of the agent through gzip, for example, and use a data source program that's prepenning gzip to the output. I mean, it's a bit a hack, but
it's a hack. I think what people want is
a real Checkmk expert can set it up, and we make it possible for everybody in future.
The point is out of the box capability.
Yeah, out of the box. Yeah. So next question: why not general ACME support and not limiting it to Let's Encrypt? Some of us have internal CAs.
What is A?
I don't know actually what ACME is, but the question is, if you have your own CA generating certificates, can you use them for these cloud
Sorry,
instances?
I forgot about that one. Good question. Yeah. So of course we will provide a way to upload your own certificate. This was all to make it simple for those who want to start quickly, but it's not about if you have your own CA or you buy from a specific vendor, whatever, we provide you the tool to add this one as well. Good
Makes
point.
sense.
Sorry, I forgot about it.
Super. Next question. Will the push agent be available in the raw edition?
To be determined. It's too early. So we have a few challenges here we need to overcome, and how this all is connected together. So in 2 months, 3 months, we are through that one.
Okay.
So I'm sorry. Good question, but I have no answer yet.
One more question, and then after that, yet more questions. So the next question is, will there be a Kubernetes, I'm not sure how it's pronounced. Will there be a Kubernetes version of Chekcmk? Like instead of OMD, all services of Chekcmk, for example, live server are located in pods. I mean, every single service of Chekcmk in a different pod, like a kind of microservice architecture. I guess not. Because
I don't think so at the moment.
because many of these services, Checkmk, don't communicate via TCP/IP. They communicate by using the same files, which makes it so performant. And if you would have to squeeze everything through TCP/IP, you would run into deep performance issues. For example, access to the round-robin databases and so on. So that's not, from a performance perspective.
We have no plans at the moment, and this is the first time I heard about that market demand. There might be others. If so, drop me a note
I think
into the roadmap channel.
It's a kind of best practice, but as you everybody know, I hate best practices.
Well, okay.
Just joking. So
we have 2 more questions, I think.
no, we have lots of more questions, but we have
not enough time.
4 more minutes. 4 more minutes. Yeah. We have still a bit of time. So then let's go ahead. Hello. How will these new features be licensed?
It will be part of the standard license, in my understanding. So if you have or maybe I should step back. So the how license can be done in 2 ways. Is it free versus enterprise license? And that depends on whether the push agent is enterprise or free.
This is a question we already have talked about. Is the push agent part of the raw edition or not? This is
that's to be determined. The other question is it service license, or is there any other licensing?
The question, I think the next question would be, if we offer Chekcmk as in the market store, how is the licensing done there? Because you will pay via the market store and not...
Exactly, that's the point. So there will be a slightly different pricing for that one.
But it's not fixed yet, isn't it?
It's not fixed yet. It's too early. We discussed a few options because we need to basically also provide a little bit of infrastructure in the background to deliver all that on a constant basis. So there will be a slightly different pricing for that.
But if you build your own infrastructure using the push agent, I mean, it will be the same license as we have today. So you pay per service. And we don't care whether it's pushed or pulled or whatever.
It's a bit too early, so we started the discussion, but we are not yet through it. So sorry, want to drive it further.
One nice business case of the push agent is to monitor mobile devices. I think it's something that already popped up yesterday. Someone said, can I monitor general clients, like laptops and so on?
So I came from my previous job. I did a lot of things with mobiles, and I think our push agent wouldn't be the right solution for mobile client. The way you handle mobiles is you install an app from the App Store, because that's the best way to distribute and keep it updated. And you can trigger those apps via so-called push message. So that's something where you tell Apple or Google that you want to reach a particular phone in a particular app, and they do the delivery for you. And then the app wakes up and delivers all the data. Yeah. And that's basically how all the apps are working. And then we can basically, the Chekcmk server can basically trigger the mobiles and ask for data. And that's a much better way than basically letting them send, because on the phones, people basically the phone makes sure that most apps are sleeping most of the time. So you couldn't depend on that they wake up and deliver the data. Only the push agent, the push, basically what we call, the mobile push via Google or Apple wakes up your app. And that's the only way to do it.
Yeah, I think it's a completely different use case and needs to be addressed with a different technique. But I think for something, it's laptops, it could be...
Laptops, so if you really want to go towards end, user device monitoring, which runs on a regular basis like a laptop, which is powerful enough and has a good network connection, then that might be a perfect solution. But as mentioned, so the mobile device, they take so much care for battery optimization that they make most of the apps are not running. Even if they pretend to run, they just hide it. Therefore, that's not the solution here. We need to do something else. We are already in discussion about an Android solution, but just having a push agent is no solution here.
Then there's a question, sounds like a sort of trick question. Isn't it also possible to switch off the monitoring system to get rid of all problems? I think, yes, we are planning to make a big master switch. So if you pull it over, everything gets green.
That will be our extra feature, very expensive extra feature.
That's twice the price of the normal enterprise edition, but it makes everything green. So
it solves your everything problem.
It will be a physical switch that you buy as an external device, kind of.
With a big glowing red.
Then there's a question, will there be a SNMP proxy for Windows hosts too? In our environment in branches, there are often only hardware Windows servers, routers and switches.
Okay.
Trick question, nasty question.
Nasty question. So at the moment, we are mostly talking about Linux, basically SNMP proxy.
Yeah.
I mentioned this, what I call the Chekcmk Lite, because we will leverage or reuse a lot of the technology we have already. So
I think it would be a pain in the ass to port that to Windows, and also it wouldn't. It's very complicated. Also, it would further complicate the normal software development press for our product anyway, because then we would also have to have these two rails of operating systems. So for us, it wouldn't really pay out to support Windows as a system running the Checkmk server.
I think so. It's too complicated and too much effort, and I think also, I don't know whether Windows is good enough for this high-performance network activities.
But as Checkmk doesn't use so much resources, you could buy a small box placing it in that branch.
Yesterday there was this discussion about
Raspberry Pi and stuff like that. I mean, there are similar architectures based on Intel, so it can run out of the box.
I think that's the answer here.
Yeah.
Having an appliance, especially for that.
Okay, so maybe last question for this talk.
Sure.
Are there plans for some kind of aggregation agent, for example, for on-premise environment with 1 to 10 hosts, SNMP, and agent, for example, where the agent sends the information bundled to the cloud from multiple hosts? That would be useful for environments too small for an extra site. So I think the question is, when we implement this mini Chekcmk thing for SNMP, couldn't that also fetch agent data? Wouldn't be a very simple addition?
We haven't thought into that. The current idea was to really have something very small and very like...
I believe if that is up and running, it could be very easy to add this normal agent data, because that's much more simpler. You just need to fetch data via TCP from port, and so probably if the other thing is working, it should be a small addition to also allow that, but it's not yet on the roadmap.
It's not yet on the roadmap. So I think that was along the discussions we had in the roadmap channel, where like MSP use cases which have like smaller sites, like a swimming basin, a theater, kino, cinema, so all of them, and they do monitoring of their requirement from like an MSP use case.
Okay, so thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thanks
for
your time.
Eaten up a bit of our break, so we usually would start at 5:30 p.m. Give us a couple of minutes more for our change, for our break. So the next speak will be, or do we have a longer break?
No, we have now the half-hour break.
Oh, we have the half-hour break. Nice, very nice.
Here.
And thanks for that. So we see us again at 6 p.m. here on this channel. We have 30 minutes of break. Take a coffee, drink some beer, whatever you like. See you in 30 minutes.